Welcome back to another episode of the 12th Man podcast. We're delighted to have Barry McFeely, founder of the City View podcast, with us tonight. I done a podcast on Barry's show back in December. Barry's, I'll probably tell you a bit more about his podcast now, but it's all access. You can try lots of different platforms. You can all see it through Baz's account on Facebook, on social media. It's on Spotify as well. Of course, Derry City got off to a terrible start, a 3-1 defeat at Shelburne, and we're going to talk about that before we get into the Premier League stuff. We're going to be looking back at Spurs beating Man United 1-0, where both clubs are at. Liverpool and Arsenal both won, so the gap stays at 7 points. But will Arsenal take any confidence from Liverpool's lack of performance, especially in the second half? We'll look at why Chelsea are struggling, and we'll look ahead to a big week of European football, including Celtic, Bayern Munich, and Real Madrid, Man City. So, Baz, delighted to have you with us. I know you've been talking about coming on to do a show. So, fitting that we bring you on as soon as Derry City start the season, of course, lose the first game.
But a cross promotion here. Hey, cheers, man. Appreciate you inviting me on here. Obviously, my podcast is more local stuff, Derry City. So, not a great start on Friday night. It was, I think the main thing that I took from Friday night was, the team selection, first of all, because I went to a few of the pre-season games at the Brandywell, and I was very, very impressed with what I saw and the manager's setup, the personnel, stuff like it, the new signings as well. I know a few of them are kind of struggling with fitness, but he seemed to be playing a very aggressive attacking 4-3-3 during pre-season games. He had a holding midfielder in there, that new signing, Carl Winchester, who looks a very good player. And then you had Robbie Benson signed from Dundalk, and Gavin White, who was like the big signing of pre-season. Everybody was looking for him, north and south of the border. And the two of them were playing in kind of advanced midfield roles. Liam Boyce was up front, and then Maggie Duffy and Don Thomas on the wings. So they were further up than what we're used to with the previous manager's tactics. I was very surprised then. Now, I'll hold my hands up. Last season, I was very, very critical of Rory Higgins and the one up front kind of stuff. But it's all right playing one up front if you have two very high wingers, which most teams play nowadays, whereas his were kind of stuck to the line, and the long ball tactics didn't actually suit the players that we really had, But it was the manager shocked me the other night by then playing a flat 4-4-2. Pat Tobin hasn't featured hardly all pre-season, so the fitness is an issue there for him straight away. So I thought maybe putting him in was a bit of a risk, and it turned out to be the case, because when you've two men up there and you've no creativity in the middle of the park, you're doing what Derry fell into, that trap they fell into so much last season, which was wide players putting everything on Mickey Duffy's shoulders, stuff like that, expecting a bit of magic, So, and then Shelburne at the same time too, their tactics, I think, caught Derry completely off guard, because, they won the league last year scoring barely 40 goals in 36 games. They were horrible to watch. 1-0 wins constantly, 0-0 draws. But they're cautious. They sit back. Damien Duff's kind of taking a bit of the Jose Mourinho playbook, and that, he lets teams come at him. But he just threw all that out the window on Friday night and just went at Derry from the first second. And it worked because they were kind of shell-shocked. They just straight in, get stuck in, a couple of quick guys up front, and it's hard to watch. And truth be told, I know it's on the first game of the season, and you have to be realistic. Nothing's won in February, as the case with the Summer League. But it wasn't a good start, So hopefully the manager's learned his lessons from that, and we might see a maybe different team on Friday night now against Bows.
I don't want to talk too much about it, obviously, because we are more Premier League based. But just while you're here and you've been at the pre-season games, I haven't seen any of the pre-season games, but I was familiar with the lineups, and obviously people told me about the 4-4-3, and it was quite attacking, quite aggressive, everything that you mentioned there. So I was very shocked when I seen Hubin and Boyce in there, and I thought two very similar strikers. I don't know how that was going to work, or how that is ever going to work. And I was very surprised. I think it took us 18 minutes to play a goal kick short. We went long quite a bit at the start, that was obviously a plan. They get the ball up, they boys and Hooben, won a few headers, and
Yeah.
get them up the pitch. They probably bypass, having to defend in our own box. But we weren't winning those battles, and we
Yeah.
lost the midfield battle. From the early stage on, we got a wee bit of control early part of the second half, but then the counter-attack just kept coming. And like you say, Shelburne we're struggling to score goals last season. And if they had scored 6 or 7 on Friday night, you couldn't really argue with, because
No,
they played by the
it wouldn't have flattered them.
5 or 6 themselves.
They were easily the best team. As I say, Derry just fell into the old traps of bypassing the midfield and going direct out wide, and it didn't work at all, especially when you've two kind of two experienced strikers up there. When they're not getting the ball and they're dropping back in the midfield, the whole balance of the team's off then, so wasn't a good start, but I'm still very optimistic for the season. We'll get on to the English stuff now, but before we switch, anybody knows about you can put the link up. I'll send you the link to the City View. If you're a Derry City fan, check it out. So started it last year, and it just got better and better as the year went on. And it just started it as a bit of crack, really, to be honest with you, doing it on my own. And now the likes of yourself and Jamie having somebody on every week makes for a better conversation and an outlook on all things Derry City. So if you have half an hour every weekend, I'll put the link up and you can check that out.
Final question before we move on. Are you worried that Pat Hooben's been shoehorned into the team because of the wages that he's on? And from what I hear, there was talk of maybe trying to shift him. That hasn't happened. Are you, as Tiernan Lynch, under a bit of pressure to fit him in? Because if he's on big money sitting on the bench, outcasted, it's not going to be a good look.
I don't think so. I actually don't think so, because like Patrick McElhinney would have been on big money last year and barely played a game. By all accounts, they're all on big money. Like Patchen was on big money last year, Andrew Wisdom. Derry's probably paying better than anybody in the country. So I don't think that's an issue. The last thing I'll say on that then is just really that I have watched Larne a lot as well, because I follow a wee bit of the Irish League. Tiernan Lynch, he plays 4-4-2 a lot. So it is one of his. He would normally play wing backs, but he always has two up front, or he goes to a flat back four. So I think that's just him doing what he's familiar with, to be honest with you. And when you look at the end of the day, quality players, quality strikers, you want to get them in the team, so you're better having two goal threats up there than one, is the way I look at it, because that was Derry's Achilles heel last year.
Yeah, if you're looking for any more reaction, the Derry City's first game of the season, be sure to check out Baz's social media account. It's also on Spotify as well, so you'll see Baz and Jamie discussing all the fallout from Derry's 3-1 defeat to Shelburne, so be sure to check it out. Baz, let's move on. They talk about the English football, because, of course, it was the biggest game of the weekend, but not in terms of where the two teams are in the league. Spurs and Man United have really had a fall from grace. And now I know Spurs have been struggling really since Pochettino left. They had a wee bit of a revival under Conte one season, but they've kind of been a team that's been scraping for top four and Europa League spots, Conference League spots. But it's been a big shock to have them so far down the table this year. United have been struggling for a number of years, but again, never found themselves this low down the table at this stage of a season. So, I mean, all the talk going on the game is about how the struggles of both teams, about the inability of both managers, saying they're not going to change, they're going to do it their way. Yeah. And one more thing that got a lot of coverage this week was Roy Keane's comments about James Maddison on the overlap on our podcast that I listened to. But Maddison come back into the team, scored the winning goal, and his celebration was aimed at Roy Keane. So, I mean, what was your thoughts on the whole situation with Maddison and Roy Keane? Because, of course, Roy Keane is a stellar name. I think James Maddison likes to think he's a stellar name. And on his day, he's a quality player, but we haven't seen enough of Maddison at his time at Leicester and his time at Spurs of being consistent for like a full season. He has periods and seasons where he's excellent, and then he goes missing for 10 or 12 games. So, I mean, what did you think of it all?
To me, he's Spurs' version of Jack Grealish. I don't think he was worth the money that was paid for him, and I think the output, well, he's probably got more goals and assists than Grealish, to be fair. So maybe that was a bit harsh there, but to me, he's nowhere near a top level player. Roy Keane was a top level player, so he's got just as valid opinion on it as anyone. I thought the celebration was a that just sums up modern football for me. Maddison's hitting back at a guy that has won more Premier League titles than he has goals this year. It's ridiculous. So, look, I actually think he's a very good player. And at the start of the year when Spurs were doing really well, and he was kind of playing in that number 10 role, they were flying. They were great to watch, gung-ho football. I think it has just kind of, the injuries haven't helped. Look, I'm wearing a Liverpool top here. I'll not bleat on about Liverpool. About 4 or 5 years ago, Liverpool won the league, and then the year after had an injury crisis that you'll never see. It was nuts. There was like 13, 14 players out at one stage, and Van Dijk was out for a year and all. Just nuts. And you can't, when your best team isn't on the pitch every week, it's
only effective. I remember that year because Liverpool had to play 2 midfielders at the back, and Spurs have had to play Archie Gray at the back. We won fit centre back, so it's a very similar situation. And they've both fullbacks have been missing at times. The goalkeeper's been injured, so they've had a real problem at the back.
He said they blood a lot of young players there. Some of them have done well. I think the keeper that was playing the last few weeks, I was very impressed by him. I thought he was very good. He's brave. He'll take a risk coming out and give the other team chances, but he's a great shot stopper now, I have to say. Is he from the Czech Republic? Is it the young keeper that was playing there?
Yeah, he was doing quite well, but he had a bit of a nightmare against Aston Villa, doesn't he?
That was just bad timing there because you knew the first choice keeper there, Vicario, was due back any week there, so he picked a bad time to have an absolute stinker that night. But no, I would agree with Ange. He kind of cracked up with the press the other day, and tried to say to them, look, you can target me all you want and talk about me getting sacked, but I'm basically playing with a team of kids because the injuries was that bad. He's been slightly dramatic there, but doesn't help as well when your best player is kind of out of form. Son, love him, great player, love watching him. Just not at the level he was when he was partnered with Harry Kane, is he really? So I think if you're a Spurs fan, you'll probably look at him and he's maybe 30, 31 now. He's on the way. Still a very good player, but his best days might be behind him. Timo Werner's, Richarlison. You can see now Spurs have dominated so many games. Like I've watched them a lot this year, and they just Solanke's been injured and stuff like that. But when Solanke's not in the team, I don't think that the backup strikers are good enough. That's the problem with Spurs. They could have
yesterday doesn't look like he's ready to be a number 9.
I don't think he has a number 9, is he? I think he's more a kind of support striker with Bayern Munich and stuff like that. And there seemed to be a whole transfer saga there as well. Did he even really want to join Spurs? And
Spurs, he's only 19 as well, so he's another kid.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, a loan deal is probably the best thing to see how he gets on, but I don't think he's not a centre forward. He's not going to lead the line and bring others into play, So you're just constantly putting square pegs in round holes because he would probably be the perfect forward to play off Harry Kane at his peak, that kind of thing. So Solanke, when he's back, I would say the manager will probably do that or have Maddison and Tell and behind him. It would look like a far better attacking lineup then, but Spurs could have lost quite handily on Sunday. United I was going to say 2 bad teams. They're not really, but I mean, United's a bad side. Xerxes, terrible player. I don't know why they bought him, but if United had a decent striker too, I think they'd have won on Sunday. And that would be my worry is that Spurs are still, you don't know what you're going to get with Spurs. And every match could end up 4-8.
You're right. They had a lot of possession, but United had the better chances in the game. You think about the Garnacho one, especially in the first half, where he had all the time in the world to put that past Vicario and he put it over the bar. But just on Maddison, splits a lot of opinion amongst Spurs fans, amongst Premier League fans, amongst pundits, media. As you say, he's a talented player. But in that first half, especially yesterday, it's probably, even though Spurs were nowhere near the best that we've seen them, it's probably the best they've played, really, in the last 2 months. Because you think about the other one was against Brentford, where they kind of had to defend a lot and defend a lot of crosses. Got an OG, went their way, and they scored at the end in the break. Whereas in that first half, they did kind of control the game a lot, and they passed it about, I think they had 70% possession. Maddison created a couple of chances. I remember the one he played over the top. They saw him. He curled it around the back, and it's a kind of pass that Spurs have been missing. So whilst Maddison's probably not at the level of a, as you say, like a Roy Keane type of player, it's going to, he wouldn't be in the Liverpool team for me. He wouldn't be in the Man City team. Probably wouldn't be in the Arsenal team.
Yeah.
But he's probably in that level below where possibly could get in the Chelsea team, the Spurs team, the Villa team, maybe Newcastle on his day, those type of teams. But I mean, he's a massive player for Spurs. 9 goals this year from midfield, and they've really missed him when he's not been on the team or he's not been anywhere near his best.
Well, I think, I mean, I'm not dismissing him. He is a very, very good player, and I think there's potentially more to come from him if he gets a run and a settled team around him. As you say, 9 goals from midfield in an injury-hit season. That's pretty good.
The social media stuff, as you said, what's a big worry. He scores 1 goal. I mean, it was harder to miss than score. It wasn't like he done anything magical. And he's on Twitter today, and he's on Instagram, and he's giving out butts, and he's over the top. And this is something that I've seen with Maddison quite a lot. Is whenever he has a good game, his social media is active, and then whenever he has a bad game, he's nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, he reacts publicly, doesn't he? He done something similar to when he was dropped from England's World Cup squad.
Yes.
That's all right, thinking that you should be in there, but for the sake of being called up again, if you come out and say I should be in ahead of such and such, or I should be in the starting 11, it just, the manager going forward is going to think, well, I don't need his attitude. The talent's there, but there seems to be a thing. But I'll not pin it on him. I mean, modern football is like that now. With social media, like it has created a whole different game now where you can go on and just let rip and say anything you want.
I think he's the type of players you said. He's got the mentality of a Spurs where he does one thing and he thinks, right, I'm brilliant again.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at players at Liverpool like Mo Salah, you never see him reacting to anything, or it's expected every week that he'll score goals and he'll make goals and gets on with his business, really. I know he's had a few comments about his interviews, but a lot of that stuff's been asked to him. He's not actually, just went out and said it himself. He's been put on the spot type of thing. I know Carragher had a pop at him when he says about, the club haven't done much for him in terms of the contract, but we'll come on to talk about that when we speak about Liverpool. Finally, just lastly on Spurs, Baz, of course, that's back-to-back ones in the Premier League now, Brentford and Man United either side of them cup exits.
Yeah.
They've got the Europa League to come. A favourable draw possibly, and we'll find out on Friday who Spurs will play. But do you think now with the players coming back, it looks like there'll be a couple more back at the weekend, and I think Van de Ven, Romero will be back for March. Spurs obviously play Ipswich at the weekend, Man City midweek, but then they have a 10-day break because they're not in the FA Cup. So you'd imagine after that 10-day break, they'll have the bulk of that squad back, and they can really push on in March when that Europa League kicks off. You think they could still have a decent end of the season?
Well, I think realistically, getting into, at the start of the year, I predicted Spurs would finish top 4. I thought they'll be on the coattails of Liverpool, Arsenal, and City. I think, top 6 is probably out of the question now because there's a couple of good sides, and like Bournemouth done very, very well this year. Nottingham Forest, I don't think
Spurs are 16 points behind 5th plus Bournemouth, so that's not going to get overturned. You're probably looking at top 10 finish.
I would say mid-table, but the amazing thing about it is, as you say, they're in the Europa League. When the playoff round's done and Spurs are waiting to see who they get in that, they could end up finishing 15th in the Premier League and one in the Europa League and qualifying for the Champions League. It's when you say it like that, it's nuts. But
if that happens, I'll tell you what, Spurs fans won't care about 15th. They'll care about the cup, won't they?
Absolutely not. And it's the same for Man United too, who are in the Europa. They could have, because their European form's actually been very, very good. Weirdly enough, they seem to be going from European win, Premier League defeat, European win. They can't get any.
We've seen this happen before. We've seen it with Liverpool, and I know it was the Champions League, but 2005, and they wanted to finish 5th in the league. Chelsea won it the year in Bayern Munich, where they finished 6th in the league.
Yeah.
So it has happened before where teams that have struggled in the Premier League have, masked over their poor league form with a cup. I doubt Liverpool fans cared that Everton finished above them in 2005 because they won the Champions League.
Exactly. I would say for Spurs at the minute, my main thing looking at them would be, and with the manager as well, because he hasn't, the signings that he's wanted maybe haven't come through. Spurs are a cup team to me. The way they play, means they're a cup team, because nobody, you've seen it with Liverpool, that kind of gung-ho, kind of clapped at it a few times when it's that kind of football, unless it's kind of composed and controlled, you're really not going to win anything consistently.
That's
Like
the
I
words
actually
you would
love,
associate with Ange Spurs.
I actually like Ange. I like, he's straight talking. I like him when he kind of bites back at, English reporters can be idiots at times, with some of their questions, and he doesn't take any crap, and I like him for that. But as I say, he doesn't, even when everybody's fit, I don't think he would have a team that would be challenging for the league, but they would definitely be giving everybody a run for their money and cup competitions and stuff like that. I would think them and United, maybe there's a couple of other big teams in there from Italy and Spain, but other than that, the standard of the Europa League is not that great. So I think they've a very, very good chance of winning that, and as you say,
Interestingly, Spurs can't play Man United at the final, which is
yeah.
who knows.
Well, I tell you what, that would be the worst final ever. So hopefully, Man U are not out long before then.
Spurs have beat United 3 times this year, so I think they would be fancying their chances if they get down in the
Yeah.
final. But let's actually talk about Man United, Barry, because it's another defeat for Amorim and Man United, and they're now sitting 15th in the league. I think it's 14 points from 14 Premier League games.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty poor return. It's actually less points than Ten Hag's last 14 games in the league. So that tells you how poor the form is. And like, there's a lot of discussion on Super Sunday yesterday with Neville and Redknapp and Defoe. And I was listening to Berbatov too. He was on an American channel. Caught him on YouTube. And everyone's got their different opinions on it. But, I mean, Neville says the one thing that you would have to say is they've not improved under Amorim, and if anything, they've got even less entertaining. That was a struggling Spurs team that they played yesterday, and they still sat back. They still played counter-attack football. They didn't really want to take Spurs on and put them under pressure, like we've seen Bournemouth do, like we've seen Brighton do. The Spurs this season, they were happy to sit back and possibly wait for their moments, like the one Garnacho had. But you're always relying on a wee bit of luck when you do that. And they fell asleep for the goal they conceded. And they haven't got a lot of goals on the team. And so when they went 1-0 down, it was always going to be a bag of ass for them. And they weren't able to score. And the position that they're in now, I have never seen Man United this low in the table at this stage, mid-February of a season.
I'm not shocked, if I'm being honest with you. I do think Amorim's a good appointment. Definitely. Having watched Sporting Lisbon a few times in the Champions League and stuff like that, I think long term he'll be a good appointment. That being said, the issue there is that there's still players there that Man United fans were probably saying need to be chased out of the club 4 or 5 managers ago. So the rotten core at Man United is still there. The players aren't there. He's coming in and he's went with a whole different system. He's obviously trying to put his own stamp on it, but the players that he has there aren't suited to that system either. They were bad to watch under Ten Hag. They're far more open now under Amorim because he's playing one less man in midfield and trying to get extra forwards on. He's kind of playing wing backs, But the issue, Gary Neville, he mentioned it there on Sunday. He said that their midfield is so open and it's terrible tactics. I don't think it's the tactics. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the system. I think it's the players that he has. I mean, if you're going to play that kind of wing backs and you have a couple of midfielders there, you need a man that still has the legs, which they don't have. Casemiro, his legs are gone. And then your other midfielder is Bruno Fernandes, who, as good a player as he is, he's not a team player. He's not going to run non-stop for 90 minutes. He's not going to do the defensive work. I mean, that's your club captain. When they were getting stuffed at Anfield a couple of years ago, he was wanting to be subbed. So that tells you everything you need to know about his attitude and stuff like that. Man United fans might disagree with me, but it was on Sky that day. Everybody's seen it. He was literally begging to be taken off when it was 4 or 5-0 because he just wasn't up for it at all. I don't know how he's captain of Man United. Good player, but that's where it ends. So that's your midfield there. All right, the young boy Menu in there, but you're asking a lot of him. The whole of midfield and put all that, do the work of 2 men when you have an old boy beside you that can't run anymore, So think that's one of the biggest robberies in football history. Real Madrid getting 70 odd million for Casemiro.
Massive wages to 5-year contract. It's
Great,
probably difficult to
great
shift them
player to
unless
say, yeah.
it's
But no, United, the personnel's not there. I mean, that's a massive, massive rebuilding job, and it's going to take him 3 or 4 transfer windows to get a settled side. I mean, he needs a whole new team there, in my opinion. There's only a couple of players there.
I do agree with you, but I do think he's a good manager, and I think Neville's is just the best thing about his time here has been his press conferences, because he says all the right things, and he looks a very serious man. He's not afraid to make a bad call like he did with Rashford. But other than a few freak results, I mean, they would have been in such a bad position. I mean, Arsenal missed a penalty in the FA Cup against 10 men. I mean, another day, Arsenal would have won that game, really. The Liverpool result, Liverpool, they caught Liverpool on an off day, and they managed to get a draw there. They were heading for defeat in the Manchester derby when they got 2 sort of fortunate goals at the end, a penalty, and City switched off at the back. Always, they were heading for defeat there. So they've had a couple of freak results that's maybe helped the overall feeling of, well, we've done well against Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, but it's the home form that's pretty drastic. Anyone that goes to Old Trafford, they can't really score goals. They've only had like 1 or 2 shots on target in some of those games, and that's even when having a penalty. So they're really struggling to create chances. And again, yesterday it was more down to Spurs' errors that give them those opportunities. So at the back they're not great. Going forward, they're not great. How does because we're talking about 3 or 4 transfer windows. He has to make sure he gets those opportunities, because this is Man United. They can't continue to keep losing and losing and losing. And all of a sudden, the fans will go, do you know what? Forget about a project. We need somebody in now that can win games.
I think Man United in the next couple of years are going to have to basically do a Chelsea and throw crazy money at players that might not be at the level that would earn that kind of money.
They've done that before. That's the issue, but
United are still world famous, one of the biggest clubs in the world, but everybody looks at them now and sees the absolute mess that the whole club is in, top to bottom. And I think you're not going to attract, straight away at least anyway, you're not going to attract the kind of players that you need to lift you up to that kind of top 4 battle there. It's going to be a long road, I think. But I mean, the issue there as well is when you have a lot of players in that team that are just bang average players, like, are you even going to move half of them on? Like, you know what I mean? No disrespect to Harry Maguire, actually, fair play to him, because he's fought his way back into the team and done well. But a couple of years ago, when he was getting all the stick and he wasn't playing well, I mean, I think they literally tried to pay off his contract and let him go to West Ham for free, and he wasn't for leaving, So you've the only boy that's kind of, to me, long term worth a place in that team would be Garnacho, and they tried to sell him to Napoli in January. So
this is the thing. It's because of the rules, isn't it? That they're trying to sell academy product to get. That's why McTominay left. That's why they're trying to shift Rashford, trying to shift Garnacho, because it balances the books. And Gary Neville says that's the worrying thing. He says, I think we need at least 8 or 9 players, but with the PSR rules, we couldn't do any business in January. I'm not sure what we can do in the summer, but it might have to be sell to buy, and they haven't really got a lot of players there that other teams would want. So could this be a real long road back? And if that's the case, despite how bad the results get, are they better sticking with Amorim regardless?
I think so. As I say, they realize now that it's probably 4 or 5 years before they're back to anywhere near the level that they were a decade ago. If you haven't got the money financially to compete, which when you're talking about Man United in that sense, it's just, that's bizarre. I mean, that is literally the biggest club in the world. I hate saying that, but financially they always were. How could Man United be not bringing in revenue that's allowing them to spend kind of decent money? Or is it the case where they've already wasted everything on the likes of Casemiro and the wages they're paying, and they're paying the price for that now, and they need to clear the decks again, start from the bottom?
Interesting. Final thoughts on it. There is a lot of talk about this system and Amorim's playing. Mazraoui having to play at centre back. Bruno Fernandes yesterday was out wide on the right hand side at times. Xerxes looks a wee bit lost in this system. Harden looks isolated at times. Do you think Amorim may try and change it if results continue? Because I know he said that he won't, but will there come a point where he's told, but he feels that he has to try something different? Because It's like that saying, if you doing things over and over again and expecting different results is insanity.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
will he make a change between now and the end of the season?
I don't think he will, to be honest with you, because it's about coming in and establishing his culture and his philosophy as well. I mean, he'll realise come June which players will fit that system and who won't, and I'm sure he'll be actively trying to get on players that can't. They've had a few injuries as well, to be fair. So, but as you say, Mazraoui is like a wing back, and he's playing centre half. Luke Shaw was at centre half there at times. I think he'd be a decent wing back, but he's never fit. There's a lot of players they signed there. As I say, I mentioned at the start, Xerxes. That's not a footballer there.
It's very difficult to play with two in midfield against most teams that have three. We've seen against Newcastle, Tonali, Jointon, and Bruno. They absolutely bossed them yesterday in midfield. Spurs had a lot of possession, and you're talking about players like Bentancur, Bergvall, and Maddison, who aren't the most physical of players. They dominated them. So there is a big issue there, and Fernandes was having to do a lot of work on the right, coming inside, and it was leaving Casemiro exposed. I know he's not their first choice player, but I even look at someone like Liverpool's midfield. Like Liverpool's midfield, they have three in there, and they're the best team in the country at the moment. They don't play with two in there. So I think for a team that's so low on the table to be playing with two in there, and I know at times the formations can change on out of possession, and the two number 10s can come on and make it a 4 a box at times, but they don't seem to have trained that system a lot because they've had to play European football and they've only had maybe a certain number of days in the training pitch. But I worry about Amorim's mental state because he's made a number of comments, which I think Jamie Carragher says is very strange to be saying these things because you're trying to get these players to believe in you, but you're labeling them as the worst United team ever. And even looking at him yesterday, he was sitting in his chair with his head buried in his hands. Do you feel that he might just walk away from this because, I think he knew it was a big job and he did when he waited the summer, but he says, look, we need you to come in now. So he reluctantly come in November.
Yeah.
But you feel there's a time when he might go, do you know what, this is all too much for me and I don't think I can fix it.
I don't think he'll do that. No, I think he'll want to prove himself. I mean, basically everybody considers the Premier League the best league in the world anyway. So if you consider yourself a top manager, you want to prove yourself in the Premier League and you want to manage in the Premier League. I think the appointment itself, and it's nothing to do with him because when they approach him, all he can do is say yes or no. I just think it's really strange that they give Ten Hag a new contract or a contract extension, whatever it was, and then backed him in the transfer market again to then pull the plug on it so early. I mean, you'd have been nearly better just seeing the season out and seeing where you were because, as you mentioned, it's gotten worse. So if it was going to get worse under him, at least you would have saved. He would have been in the last year of his contract. You'd have saved money on sacking him, and then you can rebuild. Amorim can come in.
Well, this is it, and I think as well. But if Man United end up finishing 13th or 14th and go out of the cups, he starts next season under pressure because that clean slate that he would have had in the summer is probably gone. Now I know people say it's not his team, but they won't forget about the results. There's people I know going to Old Trafford. Different people going on their on their yearly visit, or maybe they're going twice a year. And every one of them saying it's awful to watch. We're getting beat by Palace, Brighton, Bournemouth, Newcastle. Every team that goes there is winning at the moment. And even Leicester in the cup, they had to work very hard to win that. And a controversial offside goal, which if VAR was active, it would have been disallowed. So it seems like any team going to Old Trafford at the moment's got an opportunity to get 3 points. And look, they've got Fulham in the FA Cup. I don't think they'll beat them.
Fulham's a good side this year.
Fulham's a good side. I know they beat them recently, but they had to dig deep. They won that, and I think Fulham away from home are a potentially more dangerous team, as we've seen them go to Chelsea, go to Liverpool, go to Newcastle, and get results. So, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens between now and the end of the season for United. But Barry, the weekend started quite poorly for you, but at least yesterday you got a reprieve. Liverpool went 7 points clear. Arsenal put a wee bit of pressure on, but Liverpool raced on the 2-goal lead. Kind of libered the 2-1-1 in the end, but all that matters is they're 7 points clear. And look, I know a few Liverpool fans, and they says to me they do not care about the performance. It's all about the 3 points. Is that where you are? We used to be game.
Well, look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you win as long as you win, I suppose. But the manner of the performance in the second half worried me slightly. Slot is a completely different manager to Jurgen Klopp. He's more from the Pep Guardiola school of passing the ball and controlling the ball and seeing a game out rather than, full throttle, heavy metal football, as Jurgen called it. But there was none of that yesterday. I think there was a bit of a hangover from the Everton match because, obviously that midweek derby the referee was, it's not sour grapes. The referee was, anybody that watched it was genuinely would have been shocked how bad he was. But letting in a goal like that with basically the last kick of the game, and then you could just sense that the Anfield, the crowd was nervous about the same thing happening again. And look, I've been to Anfield plenty of times. The crowd at times don't help because when they're nervous, it translates to the pitch. And you could see it everywhere. They were nervous in the ball. They were giving the ball away a lot yesterday. Wolves are a good side. A couple of very good players in there. Jota, I don't know what he was thinking. Clean through, defender slid past him. He's just got a tap in under the net, basically, and he dives.
He did the same thing, if you remember, last year against Newcastle. I think it was a 4-2-1 for Liverpool or 5. I can't remember. Yeah. It was New Year's Day or something like that. Then it was 3-2 at the time, I think, and he went round the goalkeeper, and he kind of let his leg on there. But he could have actually stayed on his feet and tapped it on the empty net, and he didn't. He went down and Sal went up and buried the penalty. But like yesterday, it went against him. Yeah. And if that goes in, it's 3-0 and it's lights out.
If you're Bruno Fernandes and you're diving for a penalty, you can kind of half see why, because he takes the penalties. If you're a striker and you have a chance to bury it with a keeper and nobody else near you, why would you dive? And it's just completely bizarre. And as you say, it's not the first time he's done it. And that ended up, if he'd have just stayed on his feet and buried it for 3-0, the second half performance, or lack of performance, wouldn't have happened, because the crowd would have been buzzing. You know what I mean? The atmosphere is completely different. The players then might just 4-0, 5-0, keep going for it. You know what I mean? Whereas you miss that, Wolves go up and score within a couple of minutes, and then the whole place, rather than driving the players on, the whole stadium's nervous because of what happened with Everton. And I was the same. When I seen there was 6 minutes injury time, and just your heart sinks because
they needed the whistle at the end because Wolves were really, really pushing.
Cunha is a very, very good player. I would take him at Liverpool in a heartbeat.
And I think as well, this because these players are professional, but Wolves sensed that as well in Liverpool. Yeah. They knew, because you seen a different Wolves team in that last 30 minutes. They were rejuvenated and they thought, you know what, the whole place is nervous. The players are nervous. They're making mistakes they don't normally make. And only for a great challenge from Kwanzaa at the end, it was 2-2.
Outstanding. No, Wolves definitely, credit to their manager. He threw an extra forward on, a big guy up front, and they just went for it. Direct, and kind of put Kwanzaa and Van Dijk and Konate in the first half as well. He's either brilliant or he's awful. There's no in between with him. But Kwanzaa, to be fair, I've been critical of him this year because I think he always looks brilliant when he's alongside Van Dijk. Now, I'm 5'8" and I can't play centre half, but I would probably look brilliant playing alongside Van Dijk because he's that good. My issue with Kwanzaa is that when I see him playing alongside Gomez or Konate, he just doesn't look the same kind of player, But credit to him on Sunday. That was, the timing of that, he gets that wrong a split second. It's either a goal or he gives away a penalty. It was outstanding. Mm-hmm. And he showed a calm head, and that's, as I say, playing beside Virgil, who's the best in the business. That has to help him, So I would like to see how he comes on now, playing more alongside Virgil towards the end of the season, But because you just don't know, Konate reminds me a bit of like Lovren or Sacco, guys we used to have, where they look like the best defender in the world one week, and then the next week they just are giving fouls away and they're just all over the show, So it's, especially when you're under pressure and you're nervy. He makes me nervous as a Liverpool fan, Konate, So, but hopefully that was just a wee blip. But this week is, I know it's the football cliche, a big week ahead. This is massive. There's 2 massive away games with Aston Villa and Man City, and then a home game with Newcastle. So if they can see on yesterday, obviously you says about the nerves as well, but in midfield, do you think there was a wee bit of fatigue? Obviously they played
Everton. It was helter skelter on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Wolves sort of the dominant that second half on the ball as well. And is that the worry heading on the big week that the games are maybe catching up with them? They've done really well in the Champions League. They're in the Europa Cup final. Of course, they got a rest against Plymouth.
Yeah.
But other than that, other than the PSV game, I think he went pretty strong in the R7 Champions League game. So it's been kind of full strength teams.
Yeah.
And we've rotated a wee bit in the cups, but he went full strength against Spurs, of course, recently as well in the cup. That the Villa game now been shoehorned in between those two, the Wolves game and the Man City game.
Yeah.
It just means it's more effort required. And is that a worry? Because Gravenberch looked a bit tired yesterday. Szoboszlai in the second half looked tired. And to be fair, as you say, Kwanzaa come on and done a really good job because Kanate was struggling. And it's one thing that Slot's been very, very good at is these changes. And I thought Endo as well done quite well to come on. And of course, he made a crucial interception at the end and won a foul one just to relieve the pressure. Endo's quite good at reading them situations. Maybe not the most flashy player, but again, Slot got his substitution spot on.
I think Endo's a good wee player. A versatile player as well, can play at the back and midfield. I don't think Slot really rates him that highly, to be honest with you, because his position is normally where Gravenberch is playing in that holding midfield role, and he hasn't started a lot of games when he probably could have done and give Gravenberch a wee bit of a rest, To be honest with you, I don't think it's a fatigue thing. I think it's just you're coming to that stage of the season where every game now is tougher. And as you say, tactically, come this time, all the good football is played in the first half of the season. Then teams that win the league then end up usually grinding it out and just one after one. Man City have done it 3 or 4 years in a row where they might be banging the goals in, and then it's just relentless wins after Christmas, 15, 16, 17 wins in a row. 1-0, 2-0, just getting the job done. I think Liverpool nobody really knows what's going on behind the scenes, but they definitely should have signed another midfielder in the summer if they'd have signed Zubimendi. That whole transfer fiasco in August, you could have alternated between the two. I'm in a way, I'm kind of glad it maybe didn't happen because Gravenberch, I thought he looked a good player last year. I remember watching him years ago for Ajax too, where he was more of a kind of advanced number 8 maybe, or even in behind a forward. So I didn't expect him to be this amazing holding midfielder now this year. But there's nobody else there. I don't think he trusts Endo.
That's it. And as you say, these games this week, Gravenberch is definitely going to play against Villa. Man, so he's not going to rotate Endo. The only players he's really rotating is 2 fullbacks, and he'll rotate 2 of the 3 strikers. Sal always play, and maybe Jones and Szoboszlai rotate the all time. So you've got 6 or 7 players there that are playing pretty much every game. And now with the Champions League coming back, we've seen what's happened to Arsenal. We'll speak about Arsenal. Is there any danger? Because Ange Postecoglou mentioned this yesterday. He says, I wouldn't be surprised if more teams now as the season goes on, especially teams in Europe, start losing players. Quite a lot. We've seen United this week lose Ahmad, Menu, and Ugarte. Spurs have obviously had a crisis. Arsenal have lost most of their forward line. Is that the worry that in certain positions, Liverpool are a wee bit light, that they can't rotate? There's nobody really can play on the right-hand side if Salah gets injured. The midfield, he seems to really like having Gravenberch and McAllister on there with one more, and he's not going to rotate Kanate and Van Dijk. So it's important to lose any players in them positions.
Yeah. Well, touch wood, there is no injuries because, Liverpool, few of them players you named there, they can be replaced. I think if Van Dijk got injured, forget about it. At the back then, nobody even that's ever going to be good enough to come in and replace him. Robertson has kind of struggled this year, and then his replacement isn't great as well. Trent, thank God we've Bradley there because he's probably. Alisson was out injured for 2 or 3 months, and his replacement is arguably would be a first choice keeper for any other Premier League club, I would say. Kelleher, and Bradley's there, so there is strength and depth there for the first time in quite a while. A few years ago, we'd have been, when you got injuries, you knew, geez, we don't have the same level of players that are coming in to replace them. Thankfully, we have that. If Salah was out, Chiesa comes in, or you probably move Diaz out there. So I think we have enough strength and depth up front where that wouldn't be an issue. But I think at the back, if we get an injury, we would be. we would be toast, you know.
You mentioned it, Barry. You mentioned it, Barry. Massive week ahead. Liverpool play Villa away on Wednesday night and Man City away on Sunday. Do you think these two games? I know there's going to be 10 games after it. Still, there's 12 games left now. Is there 12 or 13 left?
I think we're at 14 left now. Is it or 13?
13. I think you're right. 13. So there's still be 11 games left after us. But do you think these two games go a long way to deciding Liverpool's fit? Because you look at the games they'll have left after that, they've only got to go to Chelsea. They have Arsenal and Spurs at home. They've played Bournemouth twice, and they'll have played Newcastle twice by the end of this month, and that's obviously at home as well. So you're looking at these two away games, and potentially it's their two most difficult away games left on paper, because Chelsea at the moment have fell off a cliff, and we'll speak about them later on. But like you're looking at, if I'm an Arsenal fan looking at this, I'm thinking it probably needs to happen this week. For us to make inroads.
I think, to be honest with you, I don't think it's make or break this week. They are two very, very tough games. But the reason I don't think that is simply because I mentioned there earlier in the episode about how Man City every year would just, after Christmas, win 15 games in a row and just wear you down and overtake you in the last month of the season. And that was it. Forget about it. I can't see that Arsenal team doing that. And that's why I'm not too panicky about... sitting here now today, I would take a draw in both games this week, the two away games, Villa and Man City. Even if Arsenal were to win and close the gap a bit, as I say, I don't think with Arsenal's injuries, and even before Havertz got injured, Havertz is an attacking midfielder playing up front. They're only actual strikers out for the year. I know Marino played up there on Saturday and scored, but that's Leicester, arguably the worst team of the league, one of the worst couple of teams in the league. I don't think that'll happen every week with him. He's not going to turn into Haaland all of a sudden. So I really don't see, I hope I'm not proved wrong on this, I really don't see Arsenal winning 10, 11, 12 games in a row now between the end of the season or till the end of the season. So I think Liverpool can afford maybe a couple of wee draws here and there. But as you say, if we get this week out of the way, if we already won both matches, I would say give us the trophy now.
I think if they get 4 points, it'll be a great week.
Yep. See, you don't know with Man City too. Man City have just been on this weird run for about 3 months where they were terrible. They won one match out of 11. And then they hammered Ipswich 6-0 and they had a couple of wins and they looked like they were back. And then PSG, stuffed them. They're kind of hanging by a thread now in Europe. So they're just not the team they were. So
I couldn't see them doing what they did at Newcastle on Saturday. So you just don't know what you're going to give them.
Exactly. So that's the problem in playing them on Sunday, is that it could be 0-0 and terrible, or there could be goals galore. You just wouldn't know. So I wouldn't want to do a prediction on that one. Villa, I think, are kind of struggling. I would be confident in maybe getting 3 points from Villa more than Man City. If we get 7 in the next 3 games, I think that'll set us on our way to winning the league, you know.
Darren says he thinks it'll take 9 more wins for us to win the league. 9 more wins from the final 13. I think, as you say, that would mean Arsenal would have to win pretty much nearly every game. We'll speak about Arsenal, Baz, because they have had a lot of things go against them. I'm no Arsenal lover, of course, being a Spurs fan, but I do think they've been punished by the law. Really, we know a lot of things that's our teams maybe haven't got away with. You think about the time wasting; they were sent off for that. The João Pedro incident with a header, he heads the back of the boy, or Saliba heads him, and they get a penalty for that. I've never seen a penalty given for that.
Yeah.
You think about the red card at Wolves, and only won that game. The red card at Bournemouth, where the next day, I think it was the Colwell in the Chelsea-Liverpool game, done something very similar, and he only get booked for it. So I do think they've been on the wrong end of 50-50 calls, and obviously they've lost a lot of players now to injury. But they did win at Leicester, and I know Leicester haven't been great. But going into the last 10 minutes, 0-0, their season's on the line, and they find a way to win. So you'd have to give them some sort of credit and say they could easily have down tools this week and says, you know what, it's just not going to happen for us. We're no strikers, no attacking players. We're relying on Raheem Sterling, who is probably more finished than Son is, and that's saying something. And they had to play Michael Marino up front at the end to get a win. So Was that something that you took notice of? They found a way to win, and they've at least kept themselves on there for an hour, but.
Well, you said there now you have to give them credit. No, I don't. So I absolutely can't stand Mikel Arteta, but he's done a good job. I thought that, as I say, Havertz is a midfielder, and to me, not a very good one, and he's playing up front. So strange ones like that, why they didn't actually go and buy an out-and-out proven striker. Like last summer, they had the chance to get Ivan Toney and wouldn't pay the money, and then he ends up in Saudi Arabia. So I think if they'd have bought him, they'd be better off than what they are. Look, Arsenal are a very, very good side. They've kind of changed their tactics this year, which is he's probably looking at that saying the next stage of our development after buying Declan Rice and stuff like that is you can't play good attacking football all the time. You have to grind out results. I'm not going to compare them to Stoke City like some people have. But they seem to be far more aggressive and a set-piece team this year. Nothing wrong with that. As I say, it's working for them. They're not as easy on the eye as they used to be, But that, I think that's what went against them last year in the title run-in, is that they weren't a team that was able to kind of get in there for a scrap and dig out results. You know what I mean? They just collapsed last year and the year before too. I mean, you could argue they should have won the league the last 2 years when they were top of the league, and then they kind of march around that time, and then a lot of draws and stuff like that. So maybe now they have a team that, as you mentioned there, 10 minutes to go, it's 0-0, and they can get a goal out of somewhere and win the match. They might not have had that in previous years, but I just think not having a recognised number 9 is going to work against them. You know what I mean? Especially in the really tough games in the last month or so, when you need that, and teams are close to relegation, fighting for everything, European places. The matches are a lot harder, and I think Arsenal will come unstuck. I don't see them winning 10, 15 games now towards the end of the year, whatever's left.
You're not convinced by some of the Arsenal fans that think Mourinho's the answer to all their prayers, that this boy could be a gem up front. I mean, I've seen a lot of Arsenal content creators were saying maybe this is going to be a good thing, that Mourinho's going to come in and show his quality in that attacking area. Do you think it was just a flash in the pan?
He's a good player. He's a very good midfielder. I enjoyed watching him for Spain and the Euros, and he was linked with Liverpool at one stage too, and I would certainly take him at Liverpool as a midfielder. Arsenal fans, Arsenal TV, that just sums them all up. If that's what they're saying now, and Marino's going to be the next big striker, then
they're calling themselves Internal Solutions FC.
They're the gift that keep on giving every year, Arsenal fans. It's better than watching BBC comedy, watching Arsenal TV. So, yeah.
Look, do you think, from an Arsenal point of view, Barry, that the fans, the players, the manager, do you feel that they'll be looking at these two games this week and thinking, if Liverpool won them both, that they're chasing in vain?
I don't think so. No, you can't think like that for any team. You know what I mean? Even like Forest and Man City, you take it one game at a time. I know this Villa game, I think, was brought forward because of the Carabao Cup final.
Yeah.
So we've had this game in hand that we've needed to catch up on for what seemed like months here, and now we'll be ahead. So I always looked at it with like points on the board. You're better with the points on the board because that puts the pressure on the other team. But if the result doesn't go Liverpool's way, then Arsenal, with the game in hand, then might be thinking they're rattled a bit, and we just need to keep doing our thing and grind out results.
They're saying that you are rattled already.
They were nervy on Sunday. I'm not rattled at all, as I say. And my reasoning for that is that I don't think Arsenal's going to win as many games as they need to go on a run at the end of the season, just because of the injuries they have. Look, Jesus, he's a loss. I think he's a good striker. Havertz, don't rate him at all, but he suited their system and stuff like that. They've ground out more results this year with him up there than they have before. So we'll see how it goes. But to be honest with you, I don't think Liverpool are thinking that way yet. They're just looking at Villa and not worrying about Arsenal's next match. And I'm sure Arsenal's doing the same. They're just preparing for their next game. If Liverpool slip up, they'll be ready to pounce, I'm sure. And the manager's like that, to be fair. I don't like him, but he is, he's determined, like, and he has them well organised, especially this year. So it will go down to the last couple of weeks. I'm sure about that. I don't think anybody's going to run away with it. Liverpool, hopefully that was just a wee blip this week in terms of the nerves from the derby. As it carried over to the next match. Slot basically admitted as much. He said, the Everton match was in the back of their mind. So now that they kind of seen Wolves off, hopefully we're going to Villa with a wee bit more confidence.
Yeah. One team that is really struggling at the minute, Barry, and we've seen a lot of teams this year go on runs like this. We were chatting about Spurs had a bad run, Man City, as you mentioned, had a bad run. And now it's Chelsea's turn. They seem to be a team that's really, really struggling. 3 wins in their last 11 league games, and this is a team that was sitting second. Going into the Christmas fixtures, they were flying. There was talk of title talk, but Marescas isn't not this season anyway. And his comments have been, you have to say, are fair based on how they've been. But a lot of Chelsea fans are saying that those comments haven't helped this situation because kind of it made the players feel like they weren't good enough to go and win a league. And I've seen some of the top Chelsea content creators have been saying that Maresca is now starting to look like a championship manager, and he can't see things in games that we need to change quickly. He's persistent with the same type of players, even if they make mistakes. So he's come under a lot of pressure. And if you remember last year, Spurs had a great start to the season. And, by the end of the season, there was a lot of Spurs fans starting to sort of turn away from Ange. Now, not the whole fan base, but of course, that's a lot more fans have turned against him this year. Yeah. But if Chelsea were to go and finish 5th or 6th in the league after finishing, being in the top 2 at Christmas, Maresca will be under a lot of pressure maybe to keep his job, because we know Chelsea, they don't muck about the managers. And I think for them not to finish in the top 4 or top 5 maybe this year, depending on the champion, if they don't qualify for the Champions League for next season, I think from the position that they run in December, it'll be viewed as a failure.
I don't think so, to be honest with you. I think it's a long-term thing there now. Obviously, they've invested a lot of money, as everyone knows, but they have a young manager too. But like United with Amorim, obviously Chelsea are further ahead than United, but it's still a long-term project. I mean, all their signings are all guys in their early 20s, so they're building a team that they're hoping, I'm sure, when it does click and comes good, it'll come good and be able to stay good for 5, 6, 7 years, because they all are on long-term contracts and that kind of thing. I think when they were second in the league coming up to Christmas, I think they just had a run of form and good luck where they were hammering a few teams, and Cole Palmer was scoring a pile of goals and stuff like that. But and they were certainly they're easy on the eye. They're good to watch, but they play an open kind of midfield as well. And when you have young boys in there that maybe don't have, you need a wee bit of experience in there. But eventually, I think that was going to catch up on them, and I think their goal all along was top 4. I don't think at any stage did the owners or the manager say, "Oh, we might be able to challenge for the league." I think it was that with the money they've spent, they just want to make sure they're in the Champions League next year to guarantee that. Obviously, the money's crazy figures this year. It used to be always 40, 50, 60 million a year getting to the group stages and TV money and stuff like that. I've seen figures now quoted that, I mean, even the likes of Celtic, if Celtic were to be knocked out this week, they'll still end up with something like 70 or 80 million getting to just the playoff round. So people getting to the semi-finals and the final are going to be well over 100 million in prize money and TV money, which is just, it's nuts, So that's going into your bank first thing next season is what every club is looking at now. I think Maresca's a good manager. He's same as Arteta. He kind of has a philosophy. He's trying to play a certain way. Amorim would be the same. He might have better players there. Still think they're weak at the back, to be honest with you. I think they have a lot of good attacking players. Chelsea, to me, are a team that's, but like Kevin Keegan's Newcastle, come back years, is that if you score 3, they'll try and score 4, which is good to watch. But I'm sure Chelsea fans would rather have the odd 1-0 on there every now and again and see a wee bit of composure. But they have a young team. I actually think in a couple of years' time they will have a very good team. So was the same when Klopp came to Liverpool or Arteta came to Arsenal. Your first target isn't to win the league; it's to get into the Champions League, because being in the Champions League can help you sign a better quality of player, and obviously the money that comes with it too. So no, I think Chelsea. If I was a Chelsea fan, I certainly wouldn't be putting pressure on the manager.
Cole Palmer had a brilliant first half of the season, but his form seems to have dipped, and that meant and it's coincided with this dip in Chelsea form. Do you think there is an over reliance on Palmer at Chelsea? He's the main source of their goals, and it's no coincidence that he's not been on his best recently, and they started to lose these games that they were winning.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a lot of pressure on him at a young age. Like, I don't know if you have the stats, but to me, seems like he scores an awful lot of penalties. I'm not taking away from him. He is a very good player. Scores worldies, scores tap-ins. He kind of does a bit of everything, But anytime I've seen Chelsea this season, he seems to be playing as a number 9 or a false 9, and I don't think that's his position. He's probably better, like Phil Foden, cutting in from the right, whatever. So you're asking more of him than what he would normally do. I think he's going to be a very good player. If I was a Man City fan, I would be probably watching him thinking, why did Guardiola? I know they have a guy coming through at the minute. Is it McAtee? There doesn't seem to be a lot of young English players that get that run of games at Man City, and you would think in a season where they're struggling, they might blood a few more, and it still doesn't seem to be the case, So he made the right choice for himself, and I give him a very good player. And everybody goes through a blip. I think he'll be fine.
Barry, Callum's just saying here, surely they've got to be aiming higher than top 4 after spending 1.2 billion. Do you think that's been the biggest surprise to Chelsea's owners, that they've spent all this money and it still might not even be enough to finish in the top 4? How much responsibility do they have to take? Because they had Potter, they sacked Tuchel, didn't they? And then they brought Potter in, then they brought Pochettino, and then they brought Maresca in. And look, if you look at it, if Nottingham Forest finish higher than Chelsea, I think there'll be questions being asked of Maresca. Now, rightly or wrongly, me and you might have a different view, because we're looking at it here and we're thinking, well, they don't really have a number 9 other than Jackson. He's now out injured to April, so who's going to play up front? And as you say, they have massive problems at centre back and a massive goalkeeping problem. So they've brought in all these attacking midfielders, and then they buy Felix after having him on loan, and then they ship him off in January on loan again. Sancho's been loaned out. Sterling's been loaned out. They seem to have a lot of similar players, and I know for a fact Maresca's not picking the players, because it's Pochettino mentioned this and Potter mentioned this, that they weren't in control if he was coming in. So how much responsibility do they have to take if Chelsea don't qualify for the Champions League this season?
Well, the manager's going to get sacked if they don't. Simple as that. It's just the way football is, and Chelsea have been the worst club at it. I mean, they sacked Di Matteo a couple of months after winning the Champions League. Tuchel won the Champions League too, and then because they were 3rd or 4th, whatever it was, he was sacked too. I think their transfer policy for a while there seemed to be just buy every really talented young player in Europe, just so that Man City or Liverpool or other sides couldn't get them. Didn't they come in at the last minute? They buy Mudryk. Arsenal were buying him for 80 million, and then they came in with 90 or whatever it was, just something crazy. Enzo, they paid 100. Liverpool were supposed to get him for 50 or 60, and then Chelsea go to 100 million from Benfica. Look, if they have the money and they're happy to spend it, fair play to them. I wish Liverpool had that money. But as you say, the transfer policy is kind of odd, but Chelsea's an oddly run club, and the manager will get sacked if they don't finish in the top 4. I think they will finish 4th, to be honest with you. I can see them kind of just...
Well, give me your top 4, actually top 5, because it looks bang on that there's going to be a 5th place for an English team due to, I think I've seen Opta's 99.8%, so it can't be any more certain than that, really. So barring a complete collapse, it's looking bang on that there's going to be 5 teams. So who do you think, what would be your top 5 now you're looking at it in February?
Well, of course, I'm going to say Liverpool first. I genuinely believe that. I think Arsenal is going to come second. And then I think Man City now, they're kind of coming out of their run. And I think if they actually get knocked out of the Champions League this week, they'll be more determined as well. They make a run at the league at the end of the season. So I'll go for Man City third. And then, as I say, I think Chelsea will just kind of that wee group of 4 or 5 teams there, like Bournemouth and Forest, that are all playing really well this year. I just think they'll run out of steam in the end. I think Chelsea will probably nick that fourth place,
And then fifth, who do you think will get in there? Who'll get the back door in the Champions League?
If it does, you know what? I would like to see Forest or Bournemouth, somebody different for a change. So either one of them.
I do like watching Bournemouth, but you know what? I disagree with you. I think Chelsea's under big pressure, because what I'm seeing at the moment, they're conceding so many goals that it's making it difficult to win these games because Palmer's out of form.
Yeah,
they lose 3-0 away at Brighton. They lost to Brighton twice, and Brighton have been struggling a wee bit. You think it was only a couple of weeks ago they beat 7-0 before us. So, at the moment they're really struggling. They beat teams that they probably should be beating. So, I think Forest, although they had a wobble at the weekend, I think they can nick games 1-0 as they demonstrated this season. So they don't necessarily have to be at their best.
Yeah.
And Bournemouth at the minute are just flying, scoring goals and not conceding many. And Bournemouth have players to come back to. So I worry for Chelsea at the minute. If I was a Chelsea fan, I wouldn't be too confident of that top 5 spot.
Yeah. Well, I can, as I say, Forest and Bournemouth, I can see them just kind of running out of steam as the season ends, and Chelsea, Cole Palmer, he could score a hat-trick.
Is that the big club bias?
I'll stick to my prediction. No, I think they will sneak it, but I don't care either way. Look, I would like to see somebody different in there for a change. Forest or Bournemouth qualifying would be unbelievable. Aston Villa came in there for the first time this year, and actually did really, really well. So it's nice to see the Champions League. Not to get off subject, but the Champions League, I'm actually enjoying the new league phase, and it has created.
All right, you're actually on subject because that's the last thing we're going to speak about before we go off. It's been brilliant having you on, but we're going to look ahead to the games this week. Not all of them, of course, but we're going to look at the main ones. We'll start with tomorrow night's game because Celtic face a huge task in Munich. Beat 2-1 at home by Bayern Munich last week. And I have to say, it was a valiant effort. I know Bayern Munich dominated the first half for large spells, but Celtic had a real go in that second half. And, a few things went against them with offsides and penalties, and another night might have went for them. I think the penalty, to be honest, once it was given, I'm surprised they overturned it. I don't think it's a stonewall penalty. I didn't see it as a clear and obvious error. So, but we do know in Europe, these things are overturned a little. I think if that was given in the Premier League, the referee wouldn't have overturned it. The VAR wouldn't have got involved, but that went against Celtic. Now they've a really, really poor away record in Europe. I think it's over 5 years since they've actually won a game, but they're going to have to win this game. They get through, and I mean it's a daunting task because Bayern Munich is one of the best teams at home in the Champions League. They've got a really, really good record at home, and we know level for level and player for player, Bayern Munich are stronger. What chance do you give Celtic, if any?
It would be some upset if it happened. I would love to see it happen. If they could get an early goal, you never know. But at the same time, too, you only have to look at their last match in Germany where they got an early goal and then Dortmund put 7 past them. So and I think obviously Bayern are a far, far better side than Dortmund. Roy Keane banging the goals in, and they've a lot of good attacking players. And Vincent Kompany's doing a great job out there. They're 8 or 9 points clear, are they, in the league now again after Leverkusen won it last year. So he's done a great job. I don't think they'll win the Champions League, to be honest with you. They'll not be far off it, but I can't see Celtic over. Even if Celtic were to get an early goal, the odds of keeping Bayern out in their own stadium for 90 minutes is probably very, very slim. And as I say, I would love nothing more to see it happen. And as young Kieran there wrote down earlier, I am a Celtic fan too. He's a slabber, so he is. Can't see it happening. It would be amazing, but
where do you think it would rank in all time? Because I know they won in 67, but would it be the best result since that final? I know they beat Barcelona. I know they beat Barcelona in the group stage 1 year, and they beat AC Milan 1 year in a knockout game, wasn't it? But in terms of being 2-1 down, going to Bayern Munich, and the landscape has changed. 15, 20 years ago, the money wasn't as one-sided. When Celtic did play United, for example, there was a feeling that they could do something. Whereas now, when they play a Premier League team, as we've seen against Aston Villa, Villa really could have put them to a sword. I know it was 4-2, but Villa, really should have been out of sight. And that game before they got the late goal, they make it 4-2. there's a massive gap between Scottish League now and Premier League. So, would it be one of their best ever results if they were to come away tomorrow night qualified for the next round?
Certainly Champions League era from whatever year it started, 92, 93. I don't think it would top beating Barcelona and that team with Messi and Xavi and Iniesta and Puyol and all them boys. That was unbelievable. But it would be close to it, especially going to if they could go tomorrow night. And so the problem is we know away goals in Europe anymore. You go and win 1-0. Means now it goes to extra time and penalties. But you'll take a one either way. It would certainly be up there. 25 years ago when Martin O'Neill was a manager, and they had Henrik Larsson and Chris Sutton. They beat Juventus 4-3. They beat Valencia 1-0. They had a couple of massive home wins that season in the group stage. But
the fact this is away from home, but it might get even more of a big shock.
Exactly. They always seem to win their home games and then get stuffed in away games. I mean, they lost 6-0 in Barcelona.
If this was the other way about and they had lost 2-1 in Munich, I think there would be Celtic fans feeling that they could turn it around tomorrow night.
Exactly. That's a good thing about this new league phase, though, is that, I mean, at one stage it looked like Aston Villa were winning that league, and then a couple of French teams, Brest and stuff like that, were top 8 at one stage, and it changed so much there. You keep even draws or whatever moves you up a couple of places. You see Man City there. Where did they finish? 20th or something like that? And they were
ended up sneaking on 22nd or 22nd there.
Exactly. Real Madrid didn't qualify automatically. So the fact that there's seeding or an automatic place and then a playoff round, I think it's made it far more interesting.
You've read my script because you're chatting about Madrid and City, and that's where we're going next. So you're fitting all these snowballs on for me. So a big credit to you for that. Madrid City on Wednesday night. Now I know you'll probably be watching Liverpool at Villa, but you'll probably be keeping an eye on this if you can as well.
Yes.
But you'll be able to see the second half, more or less the full second half, because the Villa Liverpool is 7:30. This is 8 o'clock kickoff. But City fell apart in the final parts. Because I think if it had been 2-1 to Man City, this would have made it a really interesting game. But the fact that Madrid were able to turn it around, I think everybody's expecting Madrid at home to be too strong. Is that what you would think?
I would think even if City had held out and won 2-1 last week, I'm still putting my money on Madrid to win on the Bernabeu.
Do you think it'll be quite comprehensive on Wednesday night?
No, I don't think it'll be, because I mean I think they've played each other 4 times in the last 5 or 6 years, haven't they? There was one year where it was like 5 each in aggregate and away goals, and then last year they're two very good teams. Exactly. So Real Madrid and Liverpool had that rivalry for 3 or 4 years in the finals and stuff, and now it's kind of switched to Real Madrid and Man City getting each other every year. No, I just think quality midfield wise at the minute is where Man City's really struggling without Rodri. I know that's obvious they say that, but I mean he really is a super footballer. Like he's just, you seen him for Spain in the Euros, like he's unbelievable. Irreplaceable nearly, I would say. Man City lose Haaland or they lose De Bruyne. There's players there, similar players that fit into that system. They don't have anybody like him, and it's just cost them big time this year. And I think with Madrid, Modric, Bellingham, just the midfield's too good. Valverde, I just think that's where games are won and lost, and Madrid's midfield gives them the edge for me. But I can see there've been plenty of goals, to be honest with you. I can see it been 2 each, 3-2, something again. I don't think they're going to sit back and play it. It'll not be a snooze fest anyway, I don't think.
No, I think Wednesday night again, it's an hour big night because you're going to be torn between Premier League and Champions League and trying to keep. I'm going to go to the pub maybe and watch both games at the one time.
Yeah.
But before we finish,
and nothing else.
Before we finish, the draws for these competitions are being done on Friday, and from Friday we'll know the route to the final for all teams. So Friday will be an interesting draw. At the moment, Barry, it's looking like Liverpool are going to play PSG because they're so far clear in that game against Brest. 3-0 up and they play them at home. So it's going to be PSG or Monaco and Benfica, the winner of that tie. Benfica beat Monaco away last week 1-0. So you would think Benfica's got a big advantage. But look, it's only 1 goal. Have you got any preference there who you'd like in the next round? Of course, PSG is probably the one you want to avoid at the last 16 stage.
No, to be honest with you, I don't. Not to be disrespectful to them, but They've had €1 billion in their bank account for the last how many number of years, and they've not won it yet. And I just don't think they're.
So you have no real preference for who you play in that next round?
No, I mean, look, you're going to get them at some stage anyway. You have to beat the top 3 or 4 teams to get there. The way it is now, the way the draws are now, yeah, you're going to get Real Madrid. You're going to get somebody like that, Barcelona. So I would still say, even though we're in a kind of wee bit of not a slump, we're not playing the attacking football that we were before Christmas, like when we put 6 past Spurs.
Gotta get that one.
I think, look, they'd be great games, Liverpool and Barcelona or PSG.
Well, Liverpool can't meet Barcelona to the final, of course. So is that? Do you think that's the most likely final, or do you think there'll be a spanner in there somewhere?
It's hard to take. Barcelona is a very, very good side this year. Very good.
I think that's the dream final, isn't it? I think that's it too. Because they both play attacking football, and I think that's they haven't met in a final that I can remember. So I mean, we've seen Liverpool Madrid a few times. Yeah, that'll be the final that the neutral when I say I think Liverpool Barcelona.
I remember we beat them in the UEFA Cup semi-final the year we done the cup treble with Gerard Houllier, and that was some atmosphere. That was the Barcelona team of Rivaldo and Kluivert. And
they beat them in the semi-final of the Champions League 1 year too, didn't they? And then they got beaten by Milan. Was it in the final? It was the 2007 final, was it?
No, that was we beat Barcelona 4-0 at Anfield and then beat Spurs. Funnily enough,
but even on back, remember Bellamy scored, didn't they, at the Nou Camp?
That was no, I think that was a quarter-final. I don't think it was a semi-final now. Right. But so we've a good record against them. Sorry, I keep dropping all these Spurs defeats in there. No, look, we'll see how it plays out. The only thing I'll say, I have enjoyed the group, the league phase of the Champions League this year. It's made it far more interesting. But I don't like the way the draws are like Wimbledon tennis or something, where you know who you're going to get every round. I think it should be just seeds and unseeded and drawn out of the hat. Call me old fashioned, but that when you don't know who you're going to get the next round over,
you prefer it like the FA Cup the way they do that.
It takes a wee bit of that excitement. Like the draws were something you would watch on TV anyway. Who are we going to get? But once the first draw is done, you kind of know where you're heading every round. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, look, that's.
Well, Barry, it's been brilliant having you on. Some really, really good insight there. Before you go, obviously, make sure to shout out your podcast again, in case anyone that was not at the start just listening now. There is a fair few watching here at the moment. No remember, if you are watching, you can always stick a comment on, and we can put it on the screen as well. But Barry, go ahead with your channel.
No problem. Well, okay, thanks for having me on. We'll definitely we'll do this again. I'll promise not to slag Spurs as much the next time. Any Derry City fans, you can find the Facebook page on there, the City View, and then there's an actual website I've set up there now as well with links to the podcast and stuff, and that is www.thecityview.online. So if you're a fan of the Candy Stripes and you want to hear me chat rubbish about Derry City, go ahead and give us a wee link up on that.
Well, brilliant. Make sure to check Barry's podcast because it is quite good, and it is a good format that he does as well. I really enjoy being on when I was on before Christmas. And let's hope for a good week of football, some really good games in the Champions League, and of course Liverpool take on Aston Villa in the Premier League, and Derry City return to the Brandywell on Friday night against Bohemians. Let's hope Derry can get their first one of the season, start off at home as they mean to go on, and I'm sure you'll hear all the fallout from Derry City's games this season on Barry's podcast. So if you're new around here, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more content. Barry, it's been brilliant having you on. Thanks very much.
Thanks a million, buddy. All the best. Chat to you later.